Hi class, Mr. Clark here. Today we're going to be talking about our watercolor painting techniques, all the cool special effects that we can do with watercolor paint. So the very first thing that we're going to do is put our name on our paper. And then you can go ahead and set your pencil aside, you won't be needing it anymore. The next thing we're going to do is you're going to need to get 4 sheets of final paper from me, and then we're going to create little tape circles to stick them to our paper. It doesn't matter if you use regular tape or masking tape for this, both will work. And then you'll just stick them to the back and then stick them onto the paper. We don't want to paint on our copy paper for this, it just doesn't work very well. So we're going to use final paper so that we can make sure and get really nice versions of all of these cool effects that we can do. Next, we're going to make sure that we have all of our supplies that we're going to need. So what you guys are going to need for this is you're going to need your watercolor palette with all of your paints in it. It's not going to matter which paints you use, just make sure that they're watercolor paints. Obviously, you're going to need some paint brushes. I like to have a few of varying sizes. You're going to want a paper towel to wipe your paintbrushes off on and make sure that they're dry and they've got the correct amount of water in them. You're going to want a completely dry new paper towel. We're going to use this for one of our techniques. Make sure that that one's dry and clean. You're going to want a few straws. You're going to want some Q-tips, a tiny bottle cap, and then your container of salt and your container of rubbing alcohol. Oh, and also you're going to want your cup of water to clean your paintbrushes off in between each technique if you don't want to use the same color. You can use the same color if you want, it doesn't really matter. So for our first thing that we're going to do is we are going to create an area of salt, and we're going to use salt to create a cool textured effect. So you're going to want to load up your paintbrush with some water and then pick which color you want to use. I'm just going to use blue. Dark colors tend to work best for this. So blue, green, purple works really nicely. And then you're just going to paint a big section of this piece of paper. Don't paint the entire thing just in case you want to get 2 tries. And then you're going to get a pinch of your salt and sprinkle it over the top while it's still wet. This technique is not going to work if you are slow and you let your paint dry before you sprinkle your salt on. Okay, I like to do it 2 times just to make sure if I didn't do it right the first time, my second time will come out nice. So I'm going to go with green this time. So I'm going to come and load up my paintbrush with some green, make sure I've got a nice amount of water in there, and then I'm going to paint over the second half of my paper with green. All right, now I'm going to grab another pinch of salt and sprinkle it onto my green. Now this doesn't look like anything really right now, but once it's dry, you're going to get a spotted sparkly effect from where the salt is absorbing the water around the color. So you'll get this kind of starry sky look that's very, very pretty. Next, we're going to do rubbing alcohol. So for this, we'll need to get our rubbing alcohol and use one of our little droppers to put a few drops into a bottle cap. You don't need much, just enough to cover the bottom is more than enough. And then you're going to want your straws and your Q-tips handy for this one. So for the first part of this one, I'm going to use my blue and green again, and I'm just going to paint another section of color like I did before. So I'm just going to take blue and paint the entire area. Oh, make sure you don't have any lingering salt in your area from the previous box. It would mess up this technique, so make sure it's clean. All right, so I'm going to come in here and I've got my blue and I'm painting it nice and dark around this area. Once again, I'm going to stop about halfway so that I get 2 shots in case my first try messes up. All right, now I'm going to take my straws and I'm going to dip them into my cup of rubbing alcohol, and then I'm just going to dab it onto my paper. I like to have some different size straws so I can get different effects. You can already see how I've got a very moon looking effect here, and using some of the smaller ones you can create other bubbles, but the rubbing alcohol actually pushes away the watercolor paint as opposed to the salt, which absorbs it. So you can get different effects. Touching it very lightly, I can create little tiny dots. Both of these can create interesting kind of stars or like the surface of planets almost. Very interesting effects. So for the next one, I'm going to use blue again so you can see the same results. And I'm going to create another area of blue. And then this time I'm actually going to draw on my paint with my Q-tip. So now I'm just going to dip my Q-tip into my rubbing alcohol, let it soak it up. All right, and then I'm just going to draw on my paper with my Q-tip. And you'll see how I can draw and create that pushing effect from the rubbing alcohol. I could come over and use the other side if it's getting a little dirty. I could also dot with the Q-tip as well to create any kind of texture that I want. I could even start kind of cross-hatching here to create an interesting design or effect. You could draw anything you wanted with the rubbing alcohol and the Q-tips. It's up to your imagination what you create from it. And just by dotting, created a very interesting kind of spotted motley effect. All right, our next effect is our wax resist, and I forgot to mention this in our materials, but you're going to need a crayon for this technique. I prefer white. White works really, really well, especially for your first try. I would stick with white, but just because it's going to work so much better. You can use other light colors like yellow, but white tends to work the best. So now I'm going to draw any kind of design on here with my crayon. It doesn't matter the design. Obviously, since I'm drawing with a white crayon on white paper, you guys can't see anything yet, but soon you will be able to see the technique in all of its awesome glory, which is really exciting once it starts being revealed. Once again, a lot of these techniques work the best with dark colored watercolor. I'm going to actually switch over to purple just because I'm a little tired of blue at the moment, but it doesn't really matter what color you use. You could use red or green. Any color will do. Now for this, I'm going to come and load up my purple, and then I'm just going to wash over the entire area that I already drew. You have to lay down your paint or your crayon first, otherwise this technique will not work at all. All right, now I'm just going to paint over the whole area, and you'll see the paint goes into all the areas that I didn't put the crayon on, but everywhere that I put crayon resists the paint and creates a interesting, cool effect. You could draw any sort of design with this, and then when you paint over it, the paint will resist, and it'll just bubble away, and you'll have this cool effect from whatever you drew. Now, the last effect we're going to talk about is lifting. Lifting is just taking the paint that you already had and lifting it back off of the page with a paper towel. For this one, you're going to want a nice clean paper towel that is pretty dry. This works really, really well for skies. So I'm going to switch back to blue, and for creating clouds. So I'm going to come in here with my blue, and I'm just going to paint over the entire area with my blue. Get it nice and wet. All right, and then I'm going to ball up my paper towel, and I'm going to use it to lift up my paint. And you can see how this, I can make very easy clouds with this. The harder I press down, the more lifts up. So with just a few simple touches of my paper towel, I've already gotten a nice cloud effect in there. I can switch over to the cleaner side as well and try to lift up even more to try and get some lighter spots on my cloud as well, but it creates a very interesting, very fluid looking cloud. That's it for our watercolor special techniques. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.